If we continually abdicate our personal responsibilities to institutions, ideologies, and individuals that have served humanity with mixed records, it is incumbent upon ourselves to be honest with our willingness to live with the consequences. Be not mistaken, all of us, and our future, is sitting at a precipice most can barely wrap our heads around, let alone the magnanimous implications for how life and society is being pushed in a direction we are not prepared for. Like so many fires burning around us, literal and figurative, the issue of UAPs has the intensity like any other global crisis that demands our attention. The problem is, the crisis is neither readily apparent or widely understood across a broad enough spectrum. If you can't smell the smoke, it's hard to convince people the threat from fire is real. How to manage this vast unknown as individuals and as a society likely has to be broken down into geographic regions, religious beliefs, socioeconomic positions, cultural ideology, access to education and good information, and so forth. A kaleidoscope of potentially competing factors at play as we try to update our understanding of our species and our place in the universe. Are we ready? Who will guide us through this transition? Whose interests will they serve? The U.S. government now has funding slated in 2023 designated to study non-man-made, unidentified aerospace undersea phenomena and cross-domain transmedium threats. That's a lot of fancy talk for craft that moves seamlessly through the air, water, and space that is not made by Americans or anyone else they know. It couldn't be more blunt. From the shadows, the truth is slowly emerging, and you don't even have to look hard for it. The floodgates are starting to open. There are a lot of rumbles about whistleblowers ready to come forward and tell tales about recovered craft and maybe even bodies and reverse engineering programs. If that does happen, it will be earth-shattering. But it hasn't happened yet. Should it come to pass, there will be many people who do not like what they are hearing for indefinite reasons. It is a very uncomfortable subject for many people, with aspects even those close to the issue can sometimes feel uneasy about, and perhaps for good reason. The problem is most members of the general public don't have access to enough good information to properly gauge for themselves, but the evidence is mounting. But the public needs and deserves more. However, will ardent supporters of UAP disclosure be prepared for Beijing to beat Washington to the punch? Will the enthusiastic supporters of disclosure, driven by U.S. interests, suddenly bristle and doubt facts they themselves are pushing America to disclose first? Would it cast a giant shadow of doubt over the whole process when you consider Western misgivings about China? These are very real considerations. UAPs are a global issue, especially for nuclear superpowers. Where there is atomic power, there are UAPs. Who will pull the curtains back first and speak openly and honestly about what has been really going on? Being first counts for a lot in many things. When it comes to the biggest story in our history, owning the narrative on this issue has vast, wide-reaching implications. This may also be another troublesome part of this whole issue. Maybe no one group, government, or institution has a solid grasp on the full picture, which is why no one owns the narrative. At least not yet. We are kidding ourselves if we presume institutions like the Catholic Church are not furiously positioning themselves for when the presumptive mega-disclosures occur, even if there are groups that do not support disclosure and prefer to focus their efforts on ensuring it doesn't come to pass. We've already had the soft launch of the UAP issue in the public consciousness. But are people ready to really take full notice? The growing reality being served up now will gain broader acceptance as more people come to feast on this new paradigm that's awaiting us all. And with it will come many hard-to-answer and uncomfortable questions. The Vatican runs the risk, like other powerful institutions, of very quickly losing control of a partial narrative they have helped nurture, manipulate, and covet for centuries. If, in fact, ideas mentioned by folks like Dr. Jacques Vallée that the concept of angels and demons is really just a Christian repackaging of some aspect of these phenomena or possible beings that are more advanced than we are, how will we respond? Hiding that knowledge for centuries was as easy as burning a book until the digital age. Coming clean might be one of the best ways to preserve the institution while protecting its foundational ethos. Religions can coexist with whatever this is really about, but only if we are honest with what is really happening around us and why. If Catholics want to keep pace, an example might be the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is interesting that Mormons, like the late former U.S. Senate leader Harry Reid, who helped spearhead funding for UAP programs at the Pentagon, are all over the UAP issue in the U.S. Another powerful and wealthy Mormon, Brandon Fugel, owns the famed Skinwalker Ranch next to Area 51. Remember, that's one of the world's best-known and most active hotspots for things like UAPs and other paranormal activity. Another powerful Mormon, U.S. Senator Mitt Romney, has been one of Washington's earliest and most vocal politicians willing to acknowledge the UAP phenomenon as a legitimate security concern. So what if, for argument's sake, a being or entity is discovered at Skinwalker Ranch and is presented as a messiah? At least as seen through the lens of Mormon practitioners who own the property and pay for the scientific research being done. People tend to bend things, events, or interpretations to their own perceived reality. It's not a criticism, it's simply an observation of human tendencies, just as a Catholic bishop in Brazil could do the same thing with the reported alien bodies recovered in the city of Varginha after a UFO crash back in the 1990s. Which brings it back to the need for a secular fact-finding mission on a global scale. No one group should own this issue because it affects all of us. Institutions like the Vatican need to share more of what it knows, because the truth shall set you free. Maybe people just aren't ready or simply don't care in today's new world with the heavy mental load so many are burdened with carrying. It all goes far beyond just things in the sky, the oceans, and Earth's orbit. This is about recognizing the potential that the belief system that our lives are built upon may not be as cut and dry as we'd like to think. But there is also a gaping hole for an enterprising group to walk through and own this narrative before we understand it. It's a legitimate risk. Galvanizing the public into action involving something they've been socially conditioned to ridicule, dismiss, and snicker at for decades is a monumental task. So, it is a cleansing process that must unfold over years and decades to wash out the bias. Ask a teenager, who will help lead the next generation, how comfortable they are with the concept of a multiverse. Chances are they're probably pretty okay with it. Folks over 50, well, maybe that doesn't matter, because that's not the core audience that will have the greatest amount of change thrust upon them, and then have to be the architects of the necessary changes to respond to it in the future. That's before even figuring out what it is we're supposed to be doing about it in the first place. When I posed the question to someone at the heart of this issue, it was suggested there may be a very good reason every child and their parents, with access to a movie theater in the past decade, now has grown up with the basic concept of wormholes, quantum realms, and a multidimensional existence. Coincidentally, these concepts are pillars of the new paradigm involving UAPs and the growing understanding of the power and interconnectivity of human consciousness, our universe, and space-time. But it's all just a toe in the water of a vast, unknown sea of mysteries, untangling a millennia of dogma and obfuscation if the truth is such an exhausting and daunting prospect. Getting average citizens to wrap their heads around something like the idea that our individual consciousness may be linked to a greater universal energy that might influence our interconnected reality, suddenly makes retreating to the mental safe space of who got kicked off Love Island much easier to handle, which brings it back to the struggle to try to educate people about issues they have little foundation for. It is why the tried-and-true success of bread and circuses will likely be enough to keep the people from getting involved and interfering in their own affairs. For now, at least. A former top Pentagon UAP insider, Lou Elizondo, said, "We're all heading to the same place. However, the speed and route we take is an individual choice. But the results ultimately will lead us all to the same destination." So I guess I'll see you when we get there. Thanks for listening. Be sure to give it a like and subscribe if you enjoy the content. There's new stuff coming all the time. If you'd like to know more about anything we discuss, for the people that I've interviewed, drop us a line. I'm Sean. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned. Another great video is coming up next.